In the heart of the bustling city, nestled amidst a row of quaint buildings, stood a charming little restaurant known as La Cuisson. With its warm ambiance and delectable cuisine, it had earned a loyal following of food enthusiasts who flocked there for an unforgettable dining experience. The restaurant's success was attributed to the talented and enigmatic head chef, Lucien Duval, whose dishes were nothing short of culinary masterpieces. Lucien had an air of mystery about him, always seen in the kitchen but rarely in the dining area. His tall, gaunt figure moved with strange grace, and his icy blue eyes held a secret that no one could decipher. His presence had a magnetic pull, drawing patrons from far and wide who were eager to savor the culinary delights he conjured. One such evening, a young couple, Alex and Julia, found themselves at La Cuisson. It was their anniversary, and they had heard raving reviews about the restaurant. The soft romantic lighting and the aroma of gourmet cuisine set the perfect mood for the occasion. The couple was seated at a cozy table near the window, each moment steeped in anticipation. As they perused the menu, Alex couldn't help but inquire about the elusive head chef. "Have you heard about this Lucien Duval, Julia? They say he's a culinary genius, but no one knows much about him." Julia nodded, her hazel eyes shining with excitement. "Yes, I read an article about him. They call him the Chef of Shadows. He's like a culinary ghost, known for creating dishes that are out of this world. I can't wait to taste his creations." Their meal arrived, and the first bite of the exquisite dishes was like a revelation. Each course was a masterpiece, a symphony of flavors that transcended their wildest culinary dreams. Their taste buds danced with delight as they indulged in the culinary artistry of Lucien Duval. After the meal, the couple asked the waiter if they could meet the head chef and express their gratitude in person. The waiter hesitated for a moment before agreeing to arrange a meeting. A few minutes later, Lucien Duval emerged from the kitchen, his tall, imposing figure casting a shadow across the dining room. "Ah, you wish to meet the elusive chef himself," Lucien said in a low, melodious voice that held an otherworldly quality. He approached their table with an enigmatic smile, his piercing blue eyes fixed on them. "I am pleased that you enjoyed your meal. It's not often that I come out to greet our patrons." Alex and Julia felt a cold feeling running down their spines as they gazed into Lucien's eyes. There was something in his gaze, an unsettling intensity that left them both feeling vulnerable and exposed. But his charm and the allure of his culinary prowess overshadowed their unease. The conversation flowed, and Lucien shared stories of his culinary journey and his inspiration behind each dish. He revealed that he was a man of few words, preferring to express himself through his culinary creations. Julia found herself drawn to him, unable to look away from his mesmerizing presence. As the evening drew to a close, Lucien handed Alex and Julia a small handwritten note. "A token of my appreciation for your visit," he said, his smile never wavering. They thanked him and left the restaurant, still captivated by the experience. Little did they know that their lives were about to take a dark and twisted turn. Over the next few weeks, Alex and Julia became frequent visitors to La Cuisson. Their obsession with Lucien's culinary creations deepened, and they found themselves enthralled by the enigmatic chef's presence. With each visit, they grew more infatuated with him, and their lives began to revolve around the restaurant. One evening after their meal, Lucien invited them to the kitchen to witness the magic behind his creations. Julia was thrilled, and Alex couldn't help but wonder if their fascination was becoming an obsession. In the kitchen, they watched as Lucien worked his culinary wizardry, his hands moving with a grace that seemed almost supernatural. As they left the kitchen, Lucien handed Julia another note. "A special gift for our most loyal patrons," he said with a sly smile. The note contained an invitation to a private dinner event hosted by Lucien himself at the restaurant. It was an opportunity they couldn't resist, and they eagerly accepted. The night of the private dinner arrived, and the couple was filled with excitement. They were among a select few guests seated at a long, elegantly decorated table. Lucien moved between tables, sharing stories and anecdotes, creating an intimate atmosphere. As the evening progressed, Julia noticed that some of the other guests seemed oddly subdued. Their eyes were glazed, and they spoke in hushed tones as if under a spell. She mentioned her observations to Alex, who dismissed her concerns, attributing the odd behavior to the enchantment of the evening. As the night wore on, the couple felt an increasing compulsion to please Lucien, to gain his favor. They hung on his every word, eager to meet his expectations. The intoxicating aura of the evening had them in its grip, and their obsession with Lucien deepened to a point where they would do anything to keep him happy. Finally, it was time for the pièce de résistance. Lucien unveiled a grand feast, an opulent display of culinary brilliance. Each course was a work of art, a fusion of flavors that transcended the boundaries of reality. It was a meal like no other, and the guests indulged with fervor, unaware of the sinister undercurrent that ran through the evening. As the final course was served, Lucien made a chilling announcement. "Tonight we shall partake in a tradition that has been passed down through generations," he said, his voice carrying an eerie resonance. "A tradition that binds us together forever." He raised a glass filled with a deep red liquid, and the other guests followed suit, their eyes glazed and vacant. Alex and Julia were caught in the hypnotic spell of the evening, unable to resist. They raised their glasses and drank, the liquid burning like fire as it coursed down their throats. Within moments, they felt an excruciating pain searing through their bodies, as if their very souls were being torn apart. Their vision blurred, and they gasped for breath, unable to comprehend the horror unfolding around them. As their consciousness slipped away, they saw the other guests convulsing and writhing in agony, their faces contorted in a silent scream. Lucien's smile remained intact, a sinister glint in his eyes. The next morning, the police received an anonymous tip about a series of gruesome murders at La Cuisson. When they arrived, they found a scene of unimaginable horror. The restaurant was drenched in blood, and the lifeless bodies of the guests were scattered throughout, their faces frozen in a grotesque rictus of agony. Lucien Duval, the enigmatic head chef, was nowhere to be found. He had vanished into the shadows, leaving behind a trail of terror and death. The investigation that followed would reveal the true extent of his malevolent obsession with culinary perfection, and the twisted rituals he had used to bind his victims to him. The horror of that night would haunt the city for years to come, a chilling reminder that even in the world of fine dining and gourmet cuisine, the line between obsession and madness could be razor thin. Story 2. The soft murmur of chatter and the clinking of cutlery filled the elegant restaurant as diners indulged in fine cuisine. It was a place where laughter, romance, and exquisite dishes danced together, and the soft glow of candlelight cast an enchanting spell over the room. Sarah and Mark had chosen this restaurant for their anniversary, eager to celebrate their 2 years of love and devotion in a place known for its exquisite culinary delights. As the couple sat at their table, exchanging smiles and holding hands across the polished mahogany, a subtle unease began to creep over them. Sarah had noticed a man sitting alone at the bar, his gaze fixated on their table. His dark, piercing eyes seemed to bore into her, making her skin prickle with discomfort. She nudged Mark and nodded subtly in the direction of the bar. "Mark, do you see that man at the bar?" she whispered, trying not to alarm the other diners. Mark turned to glance discreetly at the bar and saw the stranger. A shiver ran down his spine as he observed the man, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit that exuded an aura of affluence, yet his eyes were devoid of warmth. "Yeah, I see him," Mark replied in a hushed tone. "He's been staring at us for a while now. It's unsettling." Unsure of what to do, Sarah and Mark returned their attention to their meal, hoping the strange man would lose interest and move on. But his gaze remained unwavering, an unsettling presence that cast a dark cloud over their special evening. The hours passed, and the stranger's relentless stare continued to haunt them. Each time Sarah and Mark tried to catch his eye, he looked away, as if playing a sinister game. Their celebration had turned into an anxious ordeal, and they debated leaving the restaurant early. However, they were determined not to let this stranger ruin their special night. Eventually, the couple decided to confront the man, hoping that a polite inquiry would dissuade him. Mark excused himself from the table and approached the bar, where the stranger sat sipping a glass of red wine. With a forced smile, Mark initiated the conversation. "Excuse me, sir," Mark began, trying to sound nonchalant. "My wife and I couldn't help but notice that you've been watching us. Is there something you need?" The stranger turned to face Mark, his expression remaining cold and aloof. "Watching? I'm merely enjoying the ambiance of this fine establishment as you are." Mark sensed an air of arrogance in the stranger's tone, but decided not to escalate the situation further. He returned to their table and whispered to Sarah, "I talked to him, and he claims he's just here for the ambiance. Let's finish our meal and go." But as they resumed their dinner, the creepy sensation of being watched persisted. It seemed as if the stranger had intensified his gaze, his unrelenting eyes now locked onto Sarah, who could feel his presence like a weight on her soul. In a last-ditch effort to defuse the situation, Mark summoned the restaurant manager and discreetly informed him of their discomfort. The manager approached the stranger and engaged him in a quiet conversation. However, the stranger's demeanor remained unchanged, and he merely waved the manager away. As their unease deepened, Sarah and Mark grew more anxious, feeling trapped in the clutches of an inexplicable nightmare. The stranger's relentless gaze had transformed into a malevolent force, causing their anniversary dinner to unravel into a nightmarish ordeal. With dessert untouched, they decided to cut their losses and leave the restaurant. As they stood up to depart, the stranger also rose from his seat, his unsettling smile curving into a sinister grin. It was clear that he had no intention of letting them escape his grip. They rushed toward the exit. The restaurant's ambiance that had once enchanted them now felt suffocating and sinister. Panic clawed at their throats as they reached the door, but to their horror, the stranger was right behind them. His cold fingers brushed against Sarah's shoulder as he whispered, "Leaving so soon? I've been waiting for this." In a heart-pounding moment, Mark shoved the stranger away and they sprinted out of the restaurant, leaving their unfinished anniversary dinner behind. They hailed a cab, but before they could drive away, they saw the stranger standing in the restaurant's entrance, watching them with those unnerving eyes. Over the next few weeks, Sarah and Mark's lives were plagued by an insidious terror. The stalker, whose name they still didn't know, made his presence felt at every turn. They received anonymous phone calls, where the caller breathed heavily into the receiver before hanging up. Their home was broken into, their personal belongings disturbed, but not stolen. The nightmare had become all-consuming. They sought the help of the police, who could do little without concrete evidence of a crime. The stalker was cunning, leaving no trace of his identity. Even their friends and family grew skeptical of their claims, suggesting it might all be a figment of their imagination. The stalker continued to torment them, sending cryptic letters and packages containing scary mementos of their anniversary night. The police investigation yielded no results, and the couple's desperation grew. One evening, as Sarah and Mark sat in their dimly lit living room, a chilling letter arrived. It read, "You can't escape me. I will always be there, lurking in the shadows. Your love will turn to fear, and your fear will consume you. Say goodbye to your peace, for I am your shadow." The couple was paralyzed with fear, realizing that their tormentor had invaded the sanctity of their home, their most private space. The police were called once again, but the stalker's cunning remained unmatched and they couldn't trace the source of the letter. As the nightmare dragged on, the couple's love began to fray. The strain of constant fear wore them down, sapping their joy and replacing it with dread. They started to drift apart, their once strong bond weakening under the weight of their unending terror. One fateful night, as Sarah lay alone in her bed, she heard a creaking sound from the hallway. Her heart pounded as she clutched the covers, paralyzed by fear. The footsteps grew closer, slow and deliberate, and then a shadowy figure appeared in the doorway. It was the stalker, his face concealed in the darkness. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice a chilling echo. "You can't escape me." With a scream, Sarah tried to flee, but the stalker was upon her in an instant. The room became a battleground of terror and survival. She fought with every ounce of strength she had, desperately clawing, biting, and screaming for help. Mark, awakened by the commotion, rushed into the room and was met with a horrific sight. The stalker was on top of Sarah, his gloved hands gripping her throat, squeezing the life out of her. In a blind fury, Mark lunged at the attacker and a brutal struggle ensued. The stalker fought fiercely, but Mark's love for Sarah and a surge of adrenaline gave him the upper hand. With one final desperate push, he managed to overpower the stalker, pinning him to the floor. The stalker's mask slipped off in the struggle, revealing a face twisted by madness and obsession. The police arrived just in time to apprehend the stalker, who had been unmasked as a man named Victor Rourke, a former acquaintance of Mark's from years ago. The motive behind his relentless stalking remained a mystery, as Rourke refused to speak about it. Sarah survived the attack, though she bore both physical and emotional scars from the ordeal. Mark's unwavering love and heroism had saved her life, but the trauma of the past months had left indelible marks on their souls.